The gunshot echoed across Cedar Springs Station like thunder, silencing every voice on the platform. Two men in dusty dusters crumpled to the ground before they could draw their pistols fully from leather holsters. 20 feet away, Matthew Coulter stood with his Colt Army still smoking, his weathered face revealing nothing beneath the shadow of his wide-brimmed hat. Passengers scattered like startled birds, pressing themselves against the station walls. Amid the chaos, only one figure remained motionless, a slender woman in a faded blue dress, clutching a threadbare carpet bag. Her chestnut hair was pinned severely beneath a modest bonnet, her knuckles white around the bag's worn handle. She hadn't screamed like the others. The look in her eyes wasn't fear, but resignation, as though violence was merely another disappointment in a day already overflowing with them. Matt holstered his weapon with practiced precision, never taking his eyes off the woman. He stepped over one of the fallen men, moving with the deliberate gait of someone who'd spent more time in saddle than on solid ground. When he reached her, he removed his hat, revealing sandy hair streaked with silver at the temples. "Mrs. Reed, I've been waiting for you." His voice was low and graveled, and not just me. Eleanor Reed took an instinctive step back, her spine straightening despite the fatigue evident in the shadows beneath her eyes. "How do you know my name?" Matt gestured toward the dead men with a slight nod. "Those two have been tracking you since Missouri, Blackwood's men." The name hit her like a physical blow. Eleanor's composure cracked, just for an instant, before her jaw set with determination. "I don't know any Blackwood. Your late husband did." Matt's blue eyes narrowed, scanning the station. "We need to move. There'll be more coming." A whistle pierced the air as the eastbound train began pulling away. Eleanor watched it with hollow eyes, her last hope disappearing down the tracks. The conductor had been clear. Without proper fare to Tucson, she couldn't board. The teaching position that had promised salvation now seemed as substantial as smoke. "I have nowhere to go," she admitted, the words bitter on her tongue. 6 months a widow, the Missouri farm sold to cover Thomas's debts, and now stranded in a town where she knew no one. Matt picked up her carpet bag. "You have somewhere, just not where you planned." He produced an envelope from his vest pocket. "Judge Patterson of Pine Valley sent me. The school board in Tucson wouldn't have hired you anyway, not with Nathan Blackwood pulling strings to find you." Eleanor studied the letter of employment with trembling fingers. The salary was modest, $20 a month plus room and board at the town boarding house, but the signature and seal appeared legitimate. Why would Tucson reject me? And who is Nathan Blackwood? Matt checked his timepiece, impatience flickering across his features. "Your husband owed Blackwood money, a lot of it, gambling debts." "Thomas was many things, mister?" "Coulter, Matthew Coulter, sheriff of Pine Valley." "Mr. Coulter, my husband had his failings, but he wasn't a gambler." Matt's expression hardened. "Ma'am, whatever you think you knew about Thomas Reed died with him. Blackwood doesn't send killers after widows for amusement." From his saddlebag, Matt produced something that made Eleanor gasp, a Remington Derringer, pearl-handled and small enough for a woman's palm. "You'll need both of these," he said, offering her the gun and the letter. "Pine Valley is 3 days' ride northwest. It's not much, but it's beyond Blackwood's immediate reach, for now." The station master was emerging from his office, face pale at the sight of the bodies. In the distance, a whistle signaled the sheriff of Cedar Springs was coming. "I need your decision, Mrs. Reed, now." Eleanor looked at the gun, then at the men who had come to kill her, then at the letter promising a future she hadn't imagined. With steady hands, she took both offerings from the sheriff. "I'll come with you." As they rode out of Cedar Springs, the setting sun painted the landscape in blood-red hues. Eleanor clutched the saddle horn, back straight despite her unfamiliarity with horsemanship. Matthew Coulter pointed toward the horizon, where purple mountains rose against the darkening sky. "Pine Valley is your freedom, Mrs. Reed, but the road there is paved with danger." Night fell across the plains like a heavy blanket. Matthew built a small fire in a protected hollow where the flames wouldn't be visible from a distance. Eleanor watched him move with practiced efficiency, setting up camp with minimal wasted motion. "You've done this before," she observed. War teaches a man to make camp quickly. He didn't elaborate which war, but the haunted shadow that crossed his face told her enough. After a sparse meal of jerky and hardtack, Matthew unrolled his bedding on the opposite side of the fire. "Get some sleep. We leave at first light." "Mr. Coulter," Eleanor's voice cut through the crackling flames, "I want to know what I'm riding into." For a long moment, Matthew said nothing, just stared into the fire. Finally, he reached for his saddlebag and produced a bottle of whiskey. He took a measured swig before passing it to Eleanor. "Nathan Blackwood owns half the territory between here and the Wyoming line. Silver mines, cattle, railroad interests. Men like him build empires on broken backs and buried bodies." Eleanor took a small sip, the liquor burning a path down her throat. "And Thomas crossed him? Your husband worked as a bookkeeper for one of Blackwood's mines, started skimming funds, got caught. When Blackwood came to collect, Thomas didn't have the money. Blackwood gave him 6 months to pay or face consequences." Matthew's gaze was unflinching. "Your husband's death wasn't from pneumonia, Mrs. Reed. It was Blackwood's mercy running out." The whiskey bottle slipped from Eleanor's fingers, landing softly in the dirt. 6 months, exactly how long Thomas had been dead. Exactly how long she'd been selling everything, scraping together a new life. "You're saying my husband was murdered?" Her voice was barely audible. "I'm saying you're next if Blackwood finds you. The debt transfers to you in his mind." Eleanor's hand moved to the small derringer tucked in her pocket. "Is that why you gave me this? You expect me to kill a man I've never met over debts I never incurred?" Matthew's laugh was devoid of humor. "I expect you to survive, Mrs. Reed, starting now." He stood, retrieving a revolver from his holster. "Can you shoot?" By the dim firelight, Matthew taught Eleanor the basics of handling the derringer. Her hands were steady, her aim surprisingly accurate for a beginner. When she hit the makeshift target for the 3rd time, a flicker of approval crossed Matthew's face. Where did a schoolteacher learn to stand so steady with a gun? Where did a sheriff learn to track a widow across state lines? She countered. Their eyes met across the darkness, mutual appraisal in both gazes. "Get some sleep," he repeated, but this time with a hint of respect in his voice. "Tomorrow will be harder." Dawn broke with gunfire. Eleanor woke to Matthew dragging her behind a boulder as bullets splintered the tree where she'd been sleeping. 4 riders had surrounded their camp, firing from horseback. "Blackwood's men," Matthew growled, returning fire. "Stay down." The firefight was brutal and brief. Matthew's precision was uncanny. 2 riders fell before they could find cover. But as he aimed for the 3rd, a bullet caught him in the shoulder, spinning him back against the rock. The attacker advanced, thinking Matthew incapacitated. He never saw Eleanor emerge from behind the boulder, Derringer raised. Her first shot missed. Her second caught the man in the chest. The 4th rider retreated into the hills, dust trailing his escape. "We've got to move," Matthew hissed through clenched teeth, blood seeping through his shirt. "He'll bring more." Eleanor tore strips from her petticoat to bind his wound. "You need a doctor. What I need is for you to listen carefully." Matthew's voice was strained but commanding. 3 miles north, there's a stream. Follow it west until you find a stand of cottonwoods. Make camp there. I'll catch up. You're coming with me now." She helped him to his feet, surprisingly strong for her frame. "I didn't survive this long to lose my guide on day 2. They rode hard through the morning, Matthew growing paler with each passing hour. By midday, they reached the cottonwoods. Eleanor helped him dismount, then set about properly cleaning and dressing his wound. "Where does a schoolteacher learn field medicine?" Matthew asked, wincing as she extracted the bullet with a knife heated in the fire. "Where do you think?" She didn't look up from her work. "The same war that taught you to make camp." As she stitched the wound closed, Matthew studied her face. Eleanor Reed was not what he had expected when Judge Patterson ordered him to Cedar Springs. There was steel beneath her proper exterior, forged in fires Matthew recognized all too well. "Blackwood has connections everywhere," he said as she tied off the last stitch. Telegraph wires carry messages faster than horses can run. By now, every hired gun between here and Pine Valley knows to look for us. Eleanor cleaned her bloodied hands in the stream. Then we avoid towns. Not that simple. We need supplies, fresh horses. Then we disguise ourselves. She began unpinning her hair, letting it fall loose around her shoulders. The transformation was immediate, from proper schoolmarm to something wilder, less recognizable. Your turn. Matthew's beard was 3 days grown. With Eleanor's help, he shaved it clean, then used mud to darken his hair. When they finished, he barely recognized himself in her small hand mirror. Husband and wife travelers, she suggested, less memorable than a lawman and a widow. Matthew nodded, impressed despite himself. You adapt quickly, Mrs. Reed. Eleanor, she corrected. If we're playing husband and wife, you should use my given name. That night, as Matthew drifted between sleep and wakefulness, fever from his wound setting in, Eleanor searched his saddlebags for more bandages. What she found instead was a daguerreotype, a portrait of a woman and young girl, both bearing striking resemblance to Matthew. The glass was cracked, the edges singed, as if recovered from ashes. When Matthew woke near dawn, she was sitting beside him, the photograph in her hands. You didn't tell me everything, she said softly. Matthew's eyes, bright with fever, fixed on the image. No. Who were they? My wife, Caroline, our daughter, Lily. His voice was raw. They'd be close to your age now, if they'd lived. Eleanor waited, sensing there was more. 5 years ago, Blackwood wanted our land for a rail line. When I refused to sell, there was a fire. I was away. His hand curled into a fist. Blackwood made it look like an accident. Understanding dawned on Eleanor's face. You're not just escorting me to Pine Valley. I've hunted Blackwood for 5 years, but he's untouchable behind his money and men. Matthew's gaze was unflinching. Until now. You're the one thing he wants badly enough to come out of his fortress. The truth hung between them in the cold morning air. Eleanor was bait in a trap 5 years in the making. You're using me. There was no accusation in her voice, only clarity. Yes. She stood, walking to the edge of their small camp, staring into the distance where the third day's journey awaited. When she turned back, her decision was written in the set of her shoulders. I want Blackwood to pay too, Mr. Coulter, but we do this my way, not yours. Her eyes met his, unbending. I won't be sacrificed for your revenge. Matthew pushed himself upright, pain evident in every movement. What exactly is your way, Mrs. Reed? We get to Pine Valley. I become their teacher. You get your strength back. A cold determination hardened her features. And then we bring Blackwood to justice, not just vengeance. Matthew studied her for a long moment before nodding once. Justice, then. They reached Pine Valley as the sun began its descent on the third day. The town was larger than Eleanor had expected. 24 buildings arranged along a wide main street, with smaller structures dotting the surrounding hillsides. A church spire rose at one end, a saloon anchored the other. Between them stretched the promise of civilization, a general store, blacksmith, telegraph office, and a 2-story building with a sign proclaiming it the Patterson Boarding House. Judge Henry Patterson was waiting on the porch when they arrived, a tall man with an imposing silver beard and piercing eyes that missed nothing. Beside him stood a woman in her 30s, her black hair streaked with premature gray, her posture rigid with disapproval. Cutting it close, Coulter, the judge remarked, eyeing Matthew's bandaged shoulder, beginning to think you weren't coming back. Ran into some of Blackwood's welcoming committee. Matthew dismounted stiffly, then helped Eleanor down. Judge Patterson, Victoria, this is Eleanor Reed. The judge extended his hand, his grip firm and assessing. Welcome to Pine Valley, Mrs. Reed. I see Matthew has already introduced you to the dangers of our region. Victoria Patterson's greeting was cooler, her gaze openly skeptical as it swept over Eleanor's travel-worn appearance and the visible bulge of the derringer in her pocket. The children expect a teacher, not a gunslinger. Victoria is our current schoolmistress, Judge Patterson explained. Been filling in since our last teacher left. Fled, you mean? Victoria corrected. After Blackwood's men shot up the schoolhouse. Eleanor met Victoria's challenging stare without flinching. I don't frighten easily, Miss Patterson. So I see. Victoria's tone was clipped. I hope you can teach arithmetic as confidently as you wear that pistol. Matthew stepped between them. She can teach and she can shoot. Pine Valley needs both right now. Judge Patterson nodded gravely. Come inside, all of you. We have much to discuss. Over a simple but hearty meal, the judge outlined the situation. Blackwood had been systematically taking over towns throughout the territory, buying properties, bribing officials, forcing out anyone who opposed him. Pine Valley was one of the last holdouts, protected largely by its isolation and the judge's reputation for incorruptibility. He wants the water rights, Patterson explained. Our valley controls access to 3 mountain springs. In a territory where water means life, that's power Blackwood can't resist. And now he has another reason to come, Matthew added, looking meaningfully at Eleanor. Victoria's fork clattered against her plate. You've made us a target. We already were, her father countered. At least now we have some leverage. Eleanor set down her cup with deliberate calm. I came here to teach, not to be leverage. And teach you shall, Judge Patterson assured her. The schoolhouse has 15 children waiting, ages 6 to 16. But make no mistake, Mrs. Reed, the moment you crossed into Pine Valley, you became part of our fight. Later, as Victoria showed Eleanor to her room in the boarding house, the older woman's hostility had not abated. Why did you really come here? Victoria demanded once they were alone. Eleanor began unpacking her meager belongings. To start over. With a price on your head and the territory's most dangerous man as your escort? Victoria's laugh was bitter. There are easier ways to begin again. Not when you've lost everything. Eleanor turned to face her. Judge Patterson offered me a purpose. Matthew offered me protection. What are you offering, Miss Patterson? The question hung in the air between them, unexpected and direct. Something shifted in Victoria's expression, not warmth, but perhaps reassessment. Honesty. She finally replied, This town is my home. These children are my responsibility. If you endanger either, I don't care who sent you or who protects you. I'll see you gone. Eleanor nodded, accepting the terms. Fair enough. As Victoria turned to leave, Eleanor called after her. The children, what should I expect? Victoria paused in the doorway. They're scared. They've seen too much violence already. They need more than reading and sums, Mrs. Reed. They need hope. With that, she was gone, leaving Eleanor alone with the weight of expectations far heavier than she had anticipated when she first boarded a train for a teaching position that never existed. The converted barn that served as Pine Valley's schoolhouse was humble but sound. Rows of mismatched benches faced a small teacher's desk. A blackboard hung on the far wall, and shelves along the sides held a modest collection of books and supplies. Morning light streamed through high windows, dust motes dancing in the golden beams. Eleanor stood before 15 solemn faces on her first day, aware of Matthew's presence just outside, keeping watch. The children regarded her with wary curiosity, their experiences having taught them caution around newcomers. My name is Mrs. Reed, she began, writing it on the blackboard. I've come a long way to be your teacher. A boy of about 12 raised his hand. Did you really shoot one of Blackwood's men? The blunt question hung in the air. Eleanor set down her chalk, considering her response carefully. Yes, she finally said. I did what was necessary to survive, but that's not why I'm here. She picked up a worn copy of Shakespeare. I'm here because books can take us places, guns cannot. By week's end, Eleanor had earned a measure of respect from both students and parents. Her teaching methods were engaging, her discipline firm but fair. If the children noticed the derringer she kept within reach, they didn't mention it. Such precautions had become normal in Pine Valley. Matthew maintained his distance during school hours, patrolling the town perimeter, but often appeared at day's end to escort Eleanor back to the boarding house. Their conversations were brief, focused on security rather than sentiment, yet an unspoken understanding had formed between them. Survivors recognizing one another, Victoria, too, had softened her stance, occasionally joining Eleanor after supper to discuss the children's progress or share teaching materials. The two women were not friends, but they had found common ground in their dedication to the town's youngest residents. It was Victoria who brought the telegram, face grim as she handed Eleanor the yellow paper 3 weeks after her arrival. "This came for you," she said. The operator thought it strange. Eleanor read the brief message with growing alarm. "Mother gravely ill. Stop. Return home immediately. Stop. Family needs you. Stop. I need to speak with Matthew," Eleanor said, already reaching for her shawl. "He's at the saloon," Victoria replied, following Eleanor's hurried steps down the boarding house stairs. "But wait, what does it say?" Eleanor was already out the door, moving with purpose toward the town's only saloon. Inside, Matthew sat at a corner table, nursing a whiskey while maintaining a clear view of both entrances. His expression sharpened at the sight of Eleanor in the doorway. "What's wrong?" he asked as she approached, scanning the room for threats. Eleanor slid the telegram across the table. "My mother is dying." Matthew read the message, his brow furrowing. "Your mother died 10 years ago, according to the records I found in Missouri." A cold weight settled in Eleanor's stomach. "How did you know that?" "I investigated everything about you before I came to Cedar Springs." Matthew folded the telegram, looking past Eleanor to where Victoria hovered near the entrance. "Someone's trying to lure you out. Or send a message they know we're on to them," Eleanor said, mind racing. "The only person who would know about this telegram is the telegraph operator," Matthew finished, rising from his seat. "William." They moved quickly through town toward the telegraph office, Victoria following close behind. The small building was dark despite the early hour, its door slightly ajar. Matthew drew his revolver, motioning for Eleanor to stay back. The crack of a floorboard was their only warning before gunfire erupted from within the office. Matthew dove for cover behind a water trough as bullets splintered the wood around him. Eleanor pulled Victoria behind a nearby wagon, drawing her derringer. "William's been working for Blackwood all along," Victoria gasped, "sending him information about town defenses, about you." "Stay down," Eleanor ordered, peering around the wagon's edge. The firefight was brief but devastating. William emerged from the office with a shotgun, forcing Matthew to retreat further. In the moment of advantage, William swung toward the wagon where Eleanor and Victoria hid. He never saw Eleanor's shot coming. The Derringer's report was softer than Matthew's revolver, but no less deadly. William staggered, clutching his chest before collapsing in the street. Matthew approached cautiously, kicking the shotgun away from the fallen man's reach. William was still breathing, blood bubbling from his lips as Matthew knelt beside him. "Blackwood," William gasped, "coming at dawn. 20 men, no mercy." His eyes fixed on the distance, then stilled. In death, his face looked younger, almost boyish. Judge Patterson arrived moments later, summoned by the gunfire. The town gathered around as Matthew explained William's betrayal and final warning. "We have until dawn," Matthew concluded. "Those who can't fight need to leave now." The judge nodded grimly. "Victoria, organize evacuation for the children and those who can't defend themselves. Coulter, rally every man who can shoot." He turned to Eleanor. "Mrs. Reed, you should go with Victoria." "No," Eleanor's voice was firm. "This fight is partly because of me. I won't run from it." As the town mobilized, Matthew pulled Eleanor aside. "You don't have to do this. You can still leave with the others." Eleanor checked her derringer, then accepted the revolver Matthew offered as a replacement. 5 years ago, you lost your family to Blackwood. 6 months ago, I lost mine. We both want justice, Matthew. Tomorrow we get it." In the pre-dawn darkness, Pine Valley looked abandoned. Women, children, and elders had retreated to caves in the nearby hills. Those who remained, about 20 men and Eleanor, were positioned strategically throughout town. Judge Patterson had deputized anyone willing to fight, distributing badges that glinted dully in the moonlight. Eleanor took her position in the schoolhouse bell tower, rifle across her lap. Below, Matthew made final preparations with the town's defenders. "Whatever happens," he had told her earlier, "Blackwood is mine." As the first light of dawn crept over the eastern hills, riders appeared on the horizon, nearly 20 men, heavily armed, with Nathan Blackwood at their center. He was younger than Eleanor had imagined, perhaps 40, handsome in a cruel way with his tailored suit and silver-tipped cane. "Judge Patterson," Blackwood called out as they approached the town limits. "Send out the Reed woman and Coulter. No one else needs to die today." Silence answered him. The battle erupted with sudden violence. Blackwood's men charged into town, guns blazing, expecting little resistance. Instead, they rode into carefully prepared crossfire. 3 fell in the first volley. The rest scattered for cover, turning the quiet streets into a war zone. From her vantage point, Eleanor picked off 2 men attempting to flank Matthew's position. The rifle's kick bruised her shoulder, but her aim held true. Below, Matthew moved from cover to cover, his focus singular, reaching Blackwood. The fighting intensified as the sun climbed higher. Pine Valley's defenders were outnumbered but had the advantage of familiar ground. Judge Patterson fell wounded but continued directing the defense from the jailhouse. Victoria, having refused evacuation, moved among the defenders with water and ammunition. Near midday, Blackwood ordered his remaining men to set fire to the town. Eleanor watched in horror as flames engulfed the general store, then spread to nearby buildings. The tactic forced defenders from cover, making them vulnerable. Matthew seized the chaos to make his move. He sprinted across the open street toward Blackwood's position behind the saloon. A bullet caught him in the leg, another grazed his side, but he kept moving with grim determination. Eleanor abandoned her post, racing down the bell tower stairs. By the time she reached the street, Matthew and Blackwood were locked in desperate hand-to-hand combat. Blackwood's cane revealed as a sword stick that flashed dangerously in the sunlight. Matthew was losing. His earlier wounds had weakened him, and Blackwood fought with the viciousness of a cornered predator. As Blackwood raised his blade for a killing strike, Eleanor fired. Her bullet caught Blackwood in the shoulder, spinning him away from Matthew. He staggered back, eyes widening as he recognized her. "Thomas Reed's widow," he snarled, "come to pay his debts at last." Eleanor approached steadily, revolver aimed at Blackwood's heart. "There are no debts, Mr. Blackwood, only crimes and justice." Matthew pulled himself upright, blood soaking his shirt. "It's over, Nathan. Your men are dead or fled." Indeed, around them, the gunfire had faded. The remaining townspeople were emerging, putting out fires, tending to the wounded. Judge Patterson limped toward them, shotgun still in hand. Blackwood laughed, a hollow sound devoid of humor. "You think this ends anything? I own judges, governors. I'll be free before sundown." "Not this time," Judge Patterson said, reaching them. "Federal marshals are already on their way. Your empire ends today, Blackwood." As they bound Blackwood's wounds and secured him for transport, Eleanor knelt beside Matthew, helping stanch the bleeding from his leg. "Why didn't you kill him?" Matthew asked quietly. "You had the shot." Eleanor's hands were steady as she worked. "Because you were right. Not vengeance, justice." "He murdered my family," Matthew's voice broke. "He would have killed you too." "I know," Eleanor met his gaze. "But killing him wouldn't bring them back. This way, he faces the law, every family he's destroyed, every life he's ruined. That's the justice they deserve." Later, as the town began the process of rebuilding, Judge Patterson found Eleanor at the schoolhouse, sweeping away glass from shattered windows. "The children can return tomorrow," she told him. "They've missed enough lessons." Patterson nodded, impressed by her resilience. "I came to give you this." He held out a silver star, a deputy's badge. "Pine Valley needs more than just a teacher." Eleanor took the badge, turning it over in her palm. "What about Matthew?" "Sheriff Coulter will recover," Patterson assured her. "But he's fought alone too long. He needs someone who understands both justice and mercy." The judge smiled slightly. "I think you qualify, Deputy Reed." 1 month later, Eleanor stood on the schoolhouse porch as children filed in for the day's lessons. Her deputy's badge gleamed on her belt, the derringer holstered beside it, a visible reminder that Pine Valley's teacher was also its protector. Across the street, Matthew supervised young men rebuilding the damaged general store. His wounds had healed, leaving new scars to join the old ones. He caught Eleanor watching and nodded in acknowledgement. They rarely spoke of that final confrontation with Blackwood, now awaiting trial in the territorial capital. Their connection ran deeper than words, forged in shared loss, tempered in battle, strengthened by purpose. As the last child entered the schoolhouse, Eleanor recalled Matthew's words at Cedar Springs Station when he'd first appeared in her life. "I've been waiting for you." She understood now what he had meant. Not romance, but recognition. One survivor seeing another, knowing instinctively they were meant to stand together against the gathering dark. Justice had been her salvation, and in bringing it to others, she had finally found her home.